Welcome, it's Jeremy Allen Gould. I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that in fact the rumors that you have all heard are true. I started this podcast because I freaking love music. I was privileged enough to book amazing artists and bands in the past, and I was lucky enough to stay in touch with many of them to this day. This is a place to hear their stories. Thank you so much for riding along on this journey, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Hey guys, and welcome to this latest episode. And today I welcome Matt Putman. You know Matt from the bands Living Sacrifice, Eso Charis, Unwed Sailor, Orphantwin, Norma Jean, and lately Project 86. What an awesome conversation with Matt. It's really cool to just really get to know him. I didn't know him beforehand, so what an awesome opportunity. Super talented, incredibly gifted person. I'm really stoked on this episode, and I'm really hoping that you guys enjoy it as much as I do. So thank you guys for tuning in. Add me on Instagram and Facebook at The Rumors Are True Cast. And hey, stoked for the future. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's so cool to finally meet you, man.
Jeremy, great to finally meet you as well, and thanks for having me.
Oh man, how are things going on for you right now? What's going on in your life currently?
Yeah, so I'm down here in old Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Oh yeah,
just the same area that I wasn't born here, but I was raised here. Yeah, man, I just family thing. I have my own little home studio where I work on my own stuff and work with other bands. But I also just have an 8-to-5 corporate job doing digital marketing for a great company called ArcBest. So yeah, I'm just way settled into my 40s here.
Yeah, man.
Living the former full-time musician lifestyle.
Do you miss that, or are you in a good spot where you're just like, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I don't miss it at all. I really got to a point where I really did enjoy touring, and then even got to a point where I didn't really like to play shows anymore. But it's just because the whole time I played in bands, the thing, my first time being in like a real studio, but also just recording my own stuff on a 4-track in my bedroom. Like, recording was always like my first love, and the thing that got me, it didn't get me interested in playing in bands, but like it was my favorite part of it. And so I just decided that that's what I wanted to do about, 15, 16, 17 years, mid 2000s. I just kind of stopped touring and started learning more about recording, and got to the point where I've got my own space that I've been running for probably close to 10 years on and off, just collaborating with different people, working on my own stuff. And I enjoy it a lot.
That's awesome. That's super cool. It's always nice to be at an age where you're comfortable and you kind of are in the driver's seat somewhat.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. It's great memories. I had such a great time being on the road a lot and playing shows. And I still play. I play in a band called State House Electric, which is like alt country, classic country.
Oh, nice.
And we like play 2-hour sets, kind of a happy hour vibe, but it's just
awesome.
super fun. So I still, Playing shows, I don't hate it, but yeah, I'd much rather be working on records.
I get it. I think that's just probably maturity and just being to where you're in a, just the normalcy of it all, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think so.
Sweet, man. Well, let's talk about you growing up. Tell me kind of how things were growing up, and kind of talk about how music kind of got into your life and maybe influences and bands and records that kind of shaped who you are.
Yeah. So I come from a very musical family. Our great grandfather is in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame.
That's badass.
He wrote just like a ton of old hymnals. I often pick up, find old hymnal books and open them, and there'll be a song or two of his in there. And so we just grew up around a lot of singing and just music in general. So it was just kind of, we're not really a sportsy family. Like none of us played sports really growing up. We were all in the school band. I'm talking me and my three brothers. Yeah. But also most of my cousins, and we're just music is kind of where we excel as opposed to sports. But so yeah, always just listening to a lot of records growing up, and kind of in a probably late or early teens, 10 to 13, 14, Corey and I, my brother Corey, we just started, playing music. I got my first drum set. I was already in the school band, so like playing percussion and snare. So I kind of knew a little bit about it and got my first kit. He dropped out of the school band because he hated playing the trombone. So my parents got him a guitar instead. And
nice.
He just took to it really quickly. And pretty soon we were like playing, a Slayer and Alice in Chains songs in our basement.
Wow.
Just like all kinds of metal, hardcore punk, and just alternative bands, everything we were into. And from there, just playing music, you just end up hanging around with other people that play music, and pretty soon you're going to shows. And Fort Smith, the River Valley is the area that we live in. It had a really great underground punk scene, in the late 80s and 90s. Shows almost every week, the same group of 50 to 70 people, rotating in and out, and there's just a really tight knit community. And we started our first band. It was called Funnel. We were pretty terrible. It was kind of an alternative rock band kind of thing, but nobody cared. We were playing with a bunch of other people that were playing in, crust punk and power violence and classic punk, and there were just all kinds of cool bands in Fort Smith. Some of the names were like Benchmark, Doodlebug, Feck, Burned Up, Bled Dry. There were we even had a ska band called I think they're called the Mistletones.
Oh, nice.
It was just a great community in a rotating cast of clubs that we went to throughout the years. And from Funnel, that Eso Charis or Elliot, as we were called in the beginning, formed. It was the same three people from Funnel, me and Corey and Arthur Green.
Oh yeah.
And so then we started Elliot, and it was still the three of us. And then my friend Matt Depper came and joined, and so we were kind of a four-piece. But it was really never his thing. He was Matt, such a talented musician, and we always played together as well. Growing up, we had a little side project called Snail Hunter.
Oh, I think I've heard of that actually.
Yeah, we put out like one record.
Yeah.
25 years ago, but so from there we Jason Holmes came in after that. Just a guy we had met going to shows, and he was just like a guitar player, had his own band going on, but he joined up, so that became we had to rename the band because there was obviously a very huge band that was coming up at the time called Elliot, who went on to be a legendary. Yes. At the time, we just saw a review for one of their earlier records in like a Hardcore Heart Attack magazine. We were like, oh shit, we have to change the name of the band. So we Eso Charis is what we came up with.
How did you come up with that name?
It was Greek, and it's probably bad Greek, I think, but it meant, Eso means like inside or within, and then Charis means grace. So that was it. And so yeah, from there we just it was great, man. Like we started playing shows and just almost immediately had like a following.
Wow.
And we could pretty much like sell out the local punk club, which is not saying a lot, but like there's some videos from back then and it's just crazy.
That's awesome.
It's the building now is still there and it's like a car parts store now, but if you can imagine 70 to 80 kids, packed into like a small front office looking room.
Yeah.
It was pretty great. But yeah, and so just by playing Eso Charis, we were obviously like a Christian band, so like we had a lot of themes about Christianity and every song really, and so we just naturally ended up meeting and playing with the guys from Living Sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
And so we met them through Eso Charis, and Bruce Fitzhugh, lead vocalist, guitar player for Living Sacrifice. They had just started. They were writing for the Reborn record at the time.
Oh, nice.
So DJ had just left. Bruce was going on to vocals, and they played at here in town once, and it was just one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life.
I bet.
It was like mostly new material. They were writing for Reborn, and then a few songs from Inhabit. But with Bruce singing, and it was just one of the most amazing experiences. And I mean, honestly, before that, Elliot was Eso Charis. We were like, it would be closer to describe us as like a heavier Sunny Day Real Estate. Nice. But
love that.
After we saw Living Sacrifice play, we were like, oh, we got to be heavy. Yeah. Like we got to be way heavier. Yeah. And it was really funny at the time. We had this revolutionary idea. Like, what if we had screaming parts and singing parts? Which obviously is like every band now, but at the time, there really wasn't a whole lot of that.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, and we kind of did it badly, but I think our hearts.
I disagree with that. I think it was phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal.
Well, thanks. But yeah, so from there, we Bruce just really liked the band, and he wanted to help us make a record. So
let me ask you this: How long were you guys a band before you guys finally played with Living Sacrifice? Was it something that you kind of were? And I guess when you started to write the record or write the songs, were you like, "Wow, this is something cool"? Like, did you feel that way, or was it like, "Oh, this is just noise"? Like, how?
No, I think we knew that we had something kind of special and unique. We had a lot of the way we would write songs was kind of all over the place. I mean, it was mostly me and Corey, and I don't play guitar, but I can write songs in my head and like riffs. Yeah. So it would be, just be me like mouthing riffs to Corey and him taking them and like making them real. But
that's
like,
badass.
And then obviously he wrote a ton of stuff as well that was always great. And we just kind of did it that way. And we had a lot of like little musical figures that we kind of came up with. So we had something that we called a square beat. And that was just stuff like doom ga, like that kind of big shifts between chords and just a real mechanical rhythm, which is very like Voivod. Yeah. I love the Nothing Face record, and it has a lot of that kind of stuff. But we had square beats, and then we would also try to make our instruments sound like other things. So like the first song on the Eso Charis album, Warmer the Future, in the beginning you're hearing 3 different types of sirens with the guitars. So like one of them is the long, like ambulance siren. The other one is like a regular police siren, and then the bass is doing like this Mexican ambulance. Like we just wanted it to sound like a bunch of sirens going off. So we would do things like that. We were always experimenting and just trying to do something different, mainly with the guitars and with the rhythms.
I can totally see that. It's funny because when I discovered you guys, I was like, I think I probably read about you in HM or some sort of magazine, before online, obviously. And so you guys were one of those records I was trying to find, and I think I wound up buying it actually at a Living Sacrifice show. I think Bruce was selling them. Yeah. And it was like, oh, this is cool. It was the red cover record. Yeah. And I remember buying it, and I loved everything. I loved the sound. I thought it was so raw and so like, I don't know, like you said, it was a sing, scream, and at the time there was not many bands. There was like Bloodshed. There was
Bloodshed was like one of the main ones.
Yeah. So you guys
we felt
definitely
competitive with them.
Well, and you guys are both phenomenal in your own right, you know, like, and I don't think you guys sounded anything alike. It was just very like visceral, and I don't know, it was such an awesome record, and I was stoked when I got it, and I had it, and I was like, I would show everyone. I was like, this is such a badass record. Like, I really just thought it was phenomenal. And then I was curious, like, with that record, like, obviously Bruce helped you out with it. How did that, you know, obviously he was into you guys, but tell me kind of how that process went and how the recording went, and then kind of maybe touch on how Solid State kind of picked it up, or I was always curious about.
Yeah. So, just Bruce, he came to us pretty early saying that he really liked what we were doing and wanted to help somehow. And so he essentially started his own label. It was called Seize the Day Records. Okay. And he financed all the studio time with Barry Pointer at Pointer Palace, which is where Living Sacrifice made several records and a ton of other Solid State. Yeah,
was it Theo and
I mean, endless Julian Ethery, Zao, NIV, every Solid State band in the 90s recorded at Pointer Palace after Reborn because it sounded so great. But so we just like crammed to kind of finish the songs. Went into the studio. We had never been in a professional studio before. Even though it's in his garage in his back, it's not, it's pretty modest, but it was. Barry was an amazing engineer, great producer.
Absolutely.
Got great sounds, and was just super fun to work with. So I think it was like our first professional studio experience. And I didn't know how to like play to a click or anything. So like there's no click track at so the tempos are just kind of wildly all over the place. Yeah. Which kind of adds to the chaotic energy of it, Absolutely. We probably would do it different now, but obviously. But we just kind of tore through it, and then we got done with most of the music, and then like the DAT machine broke, so we ended up having to take like a 2 or 3 month break, which was torture. And then finally got to go back, and we had nothing to listen to in that time in between, so we got to go back, and it was so cool hearing the songs again. Yeah. Like, oh man. And so we spent a couple more days and just finished it up. I think the whole thing was done in less than a week total time. And it was, a lot of it was live other than the vocals. Wow. So we just we were really stoked on it. And then so Bruce put it out, and then he would take us on tour. Yeah. We did a lot of touring, and around that time was when the Truby brothers were leaving the band. So Corey started playing guitar, so we would do these tours with Eso Charis would open for Living Sacrifice, and then Corey would also play. He'd play with double duty every night. So Solid State actually didn't end up picking it up until we had been broken up for several years.
I had thought it.
And it was around the time that Living Sacrifice was working. It was like the Hammering Process era. Yeah. We just happened to be at their label one day, and I think Brandon brought it up, or maybe Bruce, and Brandon was like, yeah, I'll put it out. So so he did. It had come out earlier on a label in Sweden called Dayglow. Oh yeah. It was also Blindside's label. Yeah. And so Eso Charis, we did a tour of Europe with Blindside that was about 2 or 3 weeks long, and then that's when we broke up. Actually, we broke up at the end of that tour while we were still in Europe. Flew home, and that was sort of the end of the first incarnation of that band. But so I think I answered all your questions. I'm not sure. But
no. Yeah. No, totally. I again, that record to me at that time when I discovered you guys, I thought was such a pivotal record for me personally. And I thought it was a record that not enough people heard as well, like just in my blunt opinion.
We did have a very like real like punk rock DIY ethic, and we didn't want, like, we probably could have had that record released by Solid State, way earlier than we did. Probably when they were still called Tooth and Nail. Yeah. But we just didn't want that. Like we really, we kind of gravitated towards a more like mysterious, just sort of public persona, like all the you can't see our faces.
You achieved that goal.
You can't see our faces in any of the pictures. I remember when HM did the story on us, I sent them the picture, and it's a picture of us all walking away from the camera.
Yes. I remember that.
He emailed me. He's like, yeah, you got any other pictures? And I was like, Nope.
Well, you achieved it, man.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I mean,
that's what made me interested. Like, honestly, I was like, "Ooh, what is this all about?" Like,
yeah,
it was cool. It was awesome. Yeah. And we talked about earlier, Jason Holmes, amazing guy. Got to book Handshake Murders. I'd be remiss not to mention, obviously he passed away. How did you feel about that?
Yeah. So, Jason was obviously an old friend. We went through a lot of first experiences together. Yeah. I love Jason deeply. And, he was a difficult guy.
Yeah.
People had really complicated relationships with him, but he wasn't a really difficult, like when you were with him. He was very sweet.
Yes, I agree with that.
Very compassionate. And the kind of guy that would just drop everything he's doing to help you.
Yeah.
Incredibly kind, but he struggled with some things, and then I'm not airing anything that anyone that knows him doesn't understand, and it's just part of who he is, who he was. And when he passed last year, I hadn't seen him in probably a decade. And so I was obviously very, very out of touch with him. And he had a real small group of friends there at the end. But, I think that he left a really amazing legacy.
Absolutely.
Both with Eso Charis, but really with the Handshake Murders. I mean, they were such a great band. The Usurper record is amazing. It's a classic. It influenced a ton of bands that came after it. Jason has an amazing legacy with his music, and also just who he was as a person, the people that knew him. So
absolutely,
it's incredibly sad. But he was loved by a lot of people.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I always tell people was like a giant teddy bear. He looked like a monster, but he was a teddy bear. Like
he was huge. He was intimidating, and it's funny, he was not like that in Eso Charis. He was like the little guy.
That's hysterical.
So he like transformed into this other person. It was impressive.
That's awesome. Cool. So let's talk about you. Oh, you obviously mentioned your brother was playing with Living Sacrifice a little bit. So let's talk about how that kind of materialized and how you became a part of two phenomenal records with Living Sacrifice.
Well, thank you. So Eso Charis broke up. And real soon after that, I met Ricky Rogers, who was from the band Warlord.
Yeah.
We both had a love of like bands like Don Caballero and Bark Market.
Yeah.
And just like real aggressive post-rock type stuff. And so I ended up moving down to Hot Springs, and he and I started a band together. And I probably lived there for about 6 to 8 months, and we were playing together all the time. Wrote a bunch of like, some of the songs are pretty cool. Other ones are just interesting.
Yeah.
But we were kind of working loosely on a record and maybe on playing shows, but it was just the two of us. And it was a really great time. But it's, somewhere in there, I got a call from Bruce, and Arthur had already joined Living Sacrifice, like pretty much immediately after Eso Charis broke up. So he had moved to Little Rock. And I was only about an hour away in Hot Springs. And Bruce just called, and we just ended up talking about drums and percussion. And I ended up just kind of going on the road with them, and I would just help, basically setting up and kind of just helping tech and things like that, sell merch. And, but I would always, when they would play Something More from Reborn, like on the record, it has these like extra toms.
Yeah.
And so I would always get up and play that part, just that one part. And it was always like a real kind of a highlight of the set. We had a really fun time doing it. And we just started talking about the idea of doing more, just more percussion. And Rocky had joined at that point, so we had a full band again, and or they had a full band again. And it just was really just like that. I just started showing. I moved to Little Rock, started coming to practices, and just slowly like building up this kit. I just started out with like a tom, and then pretty soon I had a couple, and then I had a snare, and then like just some other types of drums, and then a tire rim appeared at some point, and pretty soon I had like a pretty full on rig, and so it was I started playing with them live, and it just kind of progressed to the point where I was just playing the whole time.
Wow.
Like it really wasn't like an intentional thing. It just kind of naturally happened. I just kept playing, and they didn't tell me to stop. So, so it just kind of became a really cool, interesting part of the live show.
Absolutely.
And they already had an amazing live show.
Totally.
So it just added something. Yeah. So again, it was like a natural progression. Pretty soon we were in the studio, and we were writing with percussion in mind. Yeah. All set up, run through the songs together. Everyone writing stuff. Yeah. And we made that record came together pretty easily. Like when I think back to it, it was like they had a few songs already. We wrote some more, fleshed out some older ones, and then made the record. So
wow.
We knew it was cool and different, but we didn't really know what, like, in my mind, like nothing was going to top Reborn, which is a weird thing to say about the band that you're in.
No, I get that.
But it was just such an amazing record, and still is. But I think as time has gone on, that we actually did pretty good, like at least matching it. I think the hammering process it really turned out cool. And I think that to me, it's like Reborn, hammering process is like the two best records.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But we just toured relentlessly. It was the first time we went full time, like all of us. We all quit our jobs. Wow. We would sometimes do things if we were going to be home for a month, we'd work in a kitchen if we could. But we were, the whole point was to try to stay on the road and see if we could make it work. And getting salaries. So, man, we toured relentlessly for like 2 years. On the hammering process, and it was great, but I think in the end there were just people that felt like it wasn't growing enough, in terms of audience size and opportunities and things like that. And also, man, I think we were just exhausted. I know I was.
2 years?
And
Are you kidding me?
yeah. So we had to make another record, and Conceived in Fire, which I also think turned out great. It felt more. I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for me.
Sure.
My experience with that record was just, I didn't feel very connected to it. I still wrote parts and had ideas and contributed, but I was just very disconnected at that point. So that's all I hear when I hear that record. Andy Sneap mixed it, which was really cool, just to get like a super pro metal mix on something. But man, I really look back on that time with a ton of fondness. It was great. I'm really proud of all the work we did. It's definitely still, like, the hammering process is still the record I hear about the most, like from people who just send me random messages. But yeah, and really at that point, I just really wasn't much, I don't listen to metal. And so, and I didn't back then either. Like pretty much at some point in Eso Charis, other than like the classics like Metallica and Slayer and all the things I still love, like I just stopped getting interested in newer heavy stuff. So that kind of influenced what I decided to do next, which I guess we can get into that. But
yeah. So real quick, I wanted to ask you. I know you'd mentioned obviously the two records. I just want to know your opinion, like, when you heard both of those records, being like, I played on these records, these phenomenal records, what was your thought? Like, oh man, anytime, I'm still this way. And anytime I've finished recording something, I listen to it to death. It's just my favorite thing in the world, like, is to hear something that I've created or contributed to. And so, yeah, I remember, getting back, back in the day, you got a burned CD, and, for the hammering process, and just listening in my car, and just couldn't believe it. Like how cool it sounded, what we were able to achieve with some of the songs, how present the percussion sounded, even with a full drum set, which was a real challenge for Barry to mix. Did a great job. I was incredibly proud of it. I mean, I haven't listened to it in a really long time, but I mean, I'm still that way. When I make something new, I listen to it almost immediately. And these days I have the benefit of, like, I can change things now. Like back then, there's a lot of things even on hammering process, like little hits that are off. Sure. It's like, man,
I would so fix that now, but I think it adds to the charm.
No, absolutely.
And I think you have to learn really as a producer to not fix everything.
Sure.
So it's a kind of a constant struggle, but yeah, incredibly proud of that work.
Yeah, that goes back to the Eso Charis. It's kind of like the charm of the whole record. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to mess up and it sound badass. Like, you know,
yeah, it's all over the place.
Let me ask you. I know you mentioned you toured relentlessly for 2 years, and then obviously the Conceived in Fire runs and stuff. Let's talk about some of the tours you guys did. Was there anything that stands out in your head or your mind that you know, kind of those tours or shows or particular bands you played with that you were like, whoa?
With Living Sacrifice, I mean, we did a lot of touring, like kind of in that Christian circuit. So it was great. We did a ton of shows with like POD and Project 86 and like, you know, bands like that. We did a tour once with Squad 50, and
nice. I love those guys.
I became incredibly good friends with Jeff Fortson on that tour. Just a great guy. They were so much fun. We had a lot of fun on those tours. A lot of hijinks. But then one time, Living Sacrifice, we played a festival kind of show, and we got to open for Today is the Day.
Oh wow!
Which was amazing. We played this other festival where Meshuggah headlined.
Wow.
So you know, it's hard to say you played with them, but you know, you played with them. You shared the stage, and so I mean, yeah, things like that. Where it's always cool when you get to see some of your heroes play. Especially, I mean, Today is the Day. I was a big Today is the Day fan. Ricky Rogers got me way into them. Totally. And so, I was super stoked about that. But yeah, it all kind of bleeds together now. Honestly, like. I have a really comprehensive journal, actually. Where I used to keep track of everything like religiously. It's kind of a blur, man. 2 years on the road nonstop. And then I turned around and did it again. So yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment.
Well, and you're young enough to have the energy, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So that kind of led you to maybe branching out and playing with Unwed Sailor and Jonathan Ford. Yeah. Obviously amazing. Just had him on the podcast. I love Jonathan. Yeah. He's incredible. And I actually was talking to him, and he was like, I was like, I want to get Matt on, and he's like, oh, let me hit him up, and I just, you know, he's an incredibly gifted dude.
He hit me up immediately. Yeah. John's one of my oldest friends at this point. But yeah, what happened was, you know, I mentioned I just never listened to metal. I was a huge Roadside Monument fan, which I think most people who are in this music scene are obviously know who that is.
Sure.
But just a huge fan of their work. And then obviously heard about Unwed Sailor. They had just released the Firecracker EP. It had Dave Bazan on drums.
So good.
John wrote all the songs. Casey Westcott, who went on to be in Fleet Foxes, playing guitar. Yep. And that little 4-song EP, man, I wore that thing out.
Yeah.
It was just my favorite thing in the world. The great drum beat on Ruby's Wishes just was iconic immediately. And I was just such a huge fan. And so I ended up meeting John. We were at Cornerstone. It was the year that Roadside played their last song, their last show.
Yeah.
And then Pedro the Lion had just released It's Hard to Find a Friend, I think.
Yeah, which he played on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he also played, and John, you know, so I saw John play with them, and then saw Roadside's last show, and then I ended up going to Chicago to the Japuza Jesus.
Oh yeah.
USA.
Wasn't he living out there? Or?
He was, so it was crazy. Like we just wanted to kind of check it out, see what they did, maybe like volunteer for a week, and so we just literally showed up there. I walk in and John is sitting at the front desk, like manning the desk. And so I was starstruck. Like,
I love that.
And so I'm a very earnest, forthright person. So I was just like, man, you're John Ford. I'm a huge fan. Start gushing. And we just became friends like that. We spent about a week there in Chicago. He helped us find somewhere to stay in the building. And we just hung out every day. He took us around Chicago, showing us cool stuff. Talked about music. Just became friends like that week.
That's awesome.
And so when I came back home, and he had already put Unwed Sailor back together at Japuza, and that's where he had Nick Say, who played on the second and third records, second, third, and fourth. And then he had I can't remember who the drummer, he had a few different drummers he was working with. So he had already put Unwed Sailor back together. I got home, and then I don't know how much longer it was, but I just sent him an email. I was like, hey man, I'm a huge fan, like obviously of the Unwed Sailor record. If you ever need a drummer, dude, just like let me know, and I'll drive up and we'll see if it works. And he hit me back like immediately. He's like, yeah, we need a drummer.
That's so incredible.
We made a plan. I drove up there, met, I can't remember if I had already met Nick, but, and we had a tour booked. So like we had like 2 or 3 days to get ready. And so I met them, and we just immediately started playing. And at the time, Nick had just gotten this boomerang pedal, so he could like loop his guitar parts. Yeah. But we weren't, that's real common now. And a lot of time, I mean, the drummer is almost always has a click, so they don't have to worry about timing. Well, we didn't have a click. So like, I just had to listen to like Nick's guitar intensely, because once he starts looping it, you can't, the loop is static. You have to stay with it. And man, the first day was a catastrophe. I felt like I wasn't gonna be able to do it. Got real down on myself, and just decided that I had to find a way to figure out how to play with that pedal. Yeah. Because when it would fall apart, it was real hard to put it back together. And so I finally figured out that if I listened for certain notes, like these high notes he would hit, like Nick has a very like classic chimey kind of sound to his, very melodic. And so if I could just listen for certain sounds and just make sure they're always in the same place, you know, when I'm playing drums. And that was like the key. Like once I just, instead of like trying to listen to the whole loop and stay with it, I would just listen for these key little moments and make sure that I was in the right place. And we were like a machine after that. That's so cool. I think the very first show, that's probably the most nervous I've ever been at a show. And I thought I was going to throw up. And I think I messed up on one song, but that was the only mistake. Did the whole tour, no problem. So, wow. And it just kind of went from there. We turned around and made the they had already recorded the second Unwed Sailor record, Faithful Anchor. Yeah. And Matt Johnson from Roadside Monument played drums on that, one of my favorite drummers. So obviously. Good. And but John and Nick had been writing this idea for like a musical album where the instruments are represented by characters. So they had written this whole record, the marionette and the music box, where the marionette is the bass, the music box is the guitar, and all the other sounds are characters. Yeah. So we couldn't add a sound unless it had a reason to be there. Wow. Like it had to represent something. They came to Arkansas, and we recorded that at the studio that I had with my friend Matt Depper. We called it Stalactite Oracle Studios. Great name. Excuse me. And made that whole record here in Arkansas, and then turned around, did a tour on that record. That's awesome. And it kind of went just kept going from there. But around that time is when I started playing with Lovedrug. Oh, nice. So that's when everything took a real swift change.
And how did that come about?
So there was this band called Carith Ravine.
Oh, I remember that name actually.
And they had put out like an EP and a full length. I can't remember what the labels they were on. They were kind of hard to find. And I was obsessed with this band. It was just like someone took everything I loved about the Smashing Pumpkins and Sunny Day Real Estate and Radiohead, and like made it into a band.
That sounds incredible.
Michael Shepard's voice, just the musicianship, the songwriting. I was obsessed, huge fan. And so they had kind of broken up. I was actually on tour with Unwed Sailor, and we played a show somewhere in Ohio, and Lovedrug opened for, I think they opened for us.
Oh, nice.
And Lovedrug was Michael and Adam from Carith Ravine. It was their new band. And I was already obsessed because I was just like a mega fan. Yeah. And I think it was actually Adam Baker who had given me the Lovedrug. I don't know if some people might be familiar with Adam Baker, but just a old school scene guy from back then. Great guy, but he had given me the Lovedrug. Like, I don't know if they were demos or like the first rough recordings. I loved it, fell in love with it. And so I was kind of familiar with them. But we played the show, and Tim Eddings, who was Lovedrug's manager.
Okay, yeah.
He just noticed me, I guess is the only way to put it. Like he just thought the show was good, thought I was a good drummer. And there were some issues with the Lovedrug drummer. They had just recorded the record, and he was a great guy, but he was just a wild card.
Sure.
And I don't really know all the stories, but he became difficult to be around.
Sure.
And so they needed a drummer. And so I had talked to Tim that night, told him how much I loved Character V and loved the Lovedrug stuff, how great they were live. And so Tim called me probably several months later, and the drummer they had was officially out, and they had several shows booked. And Tim is like he was an old school manager. He had, if we were playing a show, there was a reason, someone coming to see us or like, and so he was just like, the show is next week. Is there any way you could learn the set and fly out here? And I was like, I already know the set. so I did. So I flew out there the next week. We rolled up to this club called the Lime Spider. I got out, met the members of the band officially. We walked up on stage, went through the whole set once, and then played a show.
Unbelievable.
And it wasn't that bad. We got a lot better, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And man, I loved it. It was my dream band at the time. And that is not any shade to any other band that I'm in. Obviously, like Unwed Sailor is a dream band for me.
Absolutely.
But it was just the thing about that was just like, it was just like the rock and roll band, like going for it, like it was just that thing. And it was just,
and you got the vocals and you got the melody, and not that, Unwed doesn't have that, but it's, it's just kind of the whole shebang.
Just a different kind of band completely. But it was just more like, the childhood dream of like the rock band. Yeah. But, and it was just fun. I really liked the songs, and it was just a good time. And so, I ended up moving to Ohio. And also around that time, Adam, the bass player, Adam Ladd, the bass player from Lovedrug, he just really couldn't commit to the touring. So my old friend Matt Depper, back in the picture again. He's been in at this point every band that I've been in, and so he became the bass player, and we both moved to Ohio, and then spent about 2 years touring.
Wow.
Relentlessly, all over the place. We it was great. We got to open for the Killers at South by Southwest.
Unbelievable.
Before anybody knew who they were. Like there was like, it was the day Elliott Smith died. I remember that.
Whoa.
We were all backstage talking about it. But for the Killers, it was like their showcase. They had a bunch of label people coming out, but we were sharing gear with them. So like we had to just like work out all the details, and they were super nice, great guys. Their show was incredible.
Oh yeah.
Six months later, they were on top of the world. It was wild. It was wild. That was really cool. We got to open for Robert Plant, which was ridiculous. Like we had to drive all night. We were at South by Southwest, and we had an offer to open for Robert Plant in North Carolina.
Whoa.
And we were in Austin. And so we played our show and got immediately in the van, drove all night, and rolled up to the club just in time for like to unload. And it was amazing though. We got to watch from side stage, like balcony, just watching Robert Plant. Man. It was amazing. We played so many great shows and met so many cool people. I mean, Tim got assigned to Columbia Records. Like we had, it was like going on, but it just all fell apart. It was kind of the worst time for the music industry. You'd have an A&R guy. He'd be working real hard for you, and then he would be gone.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we had this contract with a label, and nobody there knew who we were. And you can't make it unless you have an A&R guy fighting totally for you. So it just kind of fell apart, and that's really when I kind of hit that brick wall for myself. Like, I don't want to tour like this. I just want to make records. And so we we did make the second Lovedrug record, Everything Starts Where It Ends, which I'm tremendously proud of.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, great record.
How was that for you?
It was super fun. I'm saying great record about my own record, but it was just really fun. Like, we had been writing, we wrote a ton. Like, pretty much if we weren't on the road, we were at the practice space. Yeah. So we had a lot of songs worked up and a lot of things to choose from. Tim was very critical of all of our demos, which was something new to me, to like think you had made the best thing ever, and then someone tell you that that sounds like Sarah McLachlan.
I love her.
I do too. You're like, yeah, that's what we wanted to do. He's like, yeah, don't do that. But it was great. We probably should have listened closer to him. Yeah, so we were just always busy writing. Yeah. Playing together. We became so tight as a band. Like, I've never seen like a Lovedrug video from when I was in the band and been like embarrassed. Nice. like we were just really tight. We had a good show. And yeah, so we went in, we made that record with Tim Padlin, Padlin is like Andy Padlin is his brother, and they're both associated with that band Sponge that had
like,
hit in the 90s. And so they had this great, awesome studio in Michigan. I can't remember, maybe like a couple hours outside of Detroit, or less than an hour, I can't remember, but it was like a horse ranch, snow everywhere, middle of nowhere, like Fargo country. But had this great studio called The Loft. And so, yeah, we spent a couple weeks there, flew home, came back a couple months later and finished it. It's a really rad record. One cool claim to fame from that record is there's a song called Salt of the Earth, where it's like the main drum beat is like, we were like stomping and dropping chains, like this kind of haunted, spooky vibe. And whenever The Last of Us video game was coming out, the very first game, they used that song for one of the early like promos before the game was out. Cool. Yeah, so you can like go and find this, it's just like a little bit of story from the game before it came out. It was just like a promo thing. And then they used that song kind of at some point in it. It was really cool. So I was really, really proud of that record. Turned out great.
What did you guys decide on, the guy from Sponge? Like, what was the...
Tim did the first Lovedrug record, Pretend You're Alive. And he did.
So you just want to go with it again?
Yeah. Just going back to the same guy who did so great the first time.
The hit maker.
The hit maker.
Sick, dude. So you obviously decided to get to that point where you're not, I don't want to travel anymore. I'm done. Is that kind of when you started to maybe recluse yourself back to wanting to live at, maybe, do production or engineering, whatever it may be? And is that kind of where that led to?
Yeah, I moved back to Arkansas. Lived with my little brother Adam for a while. Around that time, sort of during the last few months of Lovedrug, I had started dating my wife Sarah, but we started dating right around that same time. So I moved back, living with my brother Adam, and we were working on the first record for a band called Bear Colony that we had, and we did it all at Adam's house. He was kind of learning how to produce as well. And so I knew nothing really about it. I was still stuck in 4-track tape land. I hadn't caught up really much with the digital side of things.
Sure.
Matt Depper and I did have a studio, but he ran the board because I was just there for ideas and performances. Like, he's the one that was doing all the engineering. So yeah, that's just when I started learning, though, watching Adam work at first and then starting to acquire gear. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just immediately went into like a family life. Sarah and I got married a few years later. We have 2 boys. They're 21 and 22 now.
Mine are the same age, man. I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
So our son Cade he's 22, and Cade is her son from her first marriage, and then my son Miles, who just turned 21, my son from my first marriage. Sure. So we don't have kids together, but we immediately had a family. They were like cool. 2 and 3 at the time, and so we got our first place, and it was the first time I had not the first time. I had a dedicated studio space before, but it was like this time it was mine.
Yeah.
Like all mine. Wasn't sharing it with anybody. So yeah, we worked on that first Bear Colony record, finished it. That came out. They did a lot of touring. At that point, I was still playing shows now and again, but just no touring. I just didn't want to be on the road. But yeah, I mean, it's like from there, it just became, there was just like this 10-year learning period, basically, from like 2006 to like 2015-ish, where I was just trying different DAWs, like started with Fruity Loops and then started using Audition, tried Pro Tools, and ended up landing on Ableton, which I absolutely love. And I've used Ableton for a decade at this point.
Wow.
And that just, I mean, Fruity Loops helped a lot. I really wanted to explore sampling and like sort of hip hop production techniques, but I wanted, with like indie music, pop music, things like that. Nothing new at all, but I wanted to understand how to do it. And so just got heavily into that, and so for 10 years, like I was still like playing on records now and again, but I was really just learning how to like produce.
Hone your craft.
Yeah. That was really it. Just like learning how to create what I was hearing in my head, as closely as I could. So, in that time we did the first 2 Bear Colony records. Unwed Sailor did Little Wars.
Great
in
record.
that time. I played on Redeemer by Norma Jean. Did a record with David Thomas Owen, who was the guitar player for Lovedrug, which is a really great. It's like 3 members of Lovedrug, me, Matt Depper, and Dave. Immediately after the band broke up, Dave made. So it's like this. It's like this alternative universe Lovedrug record with Dave on
I have to check that out.
It's cool. He's a great songwriter. And then there were a bunch of little records sprinkled in there and again, but didn't, at some point, probably about 3 or 4 years ago is when I really started working with other bands. So like, my thing is like, I don't have to have a studio to make money. It's just, it's not a money making venture. It's just because I enjoy it. So I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, which is
great.
A great place to be in. I mean, I say no to more things than I say yes to. But yeah, it's kind of, I think, the way I kind of want to spend the rest of my career is really, my music career is just in this place, like producing, collaborating, and really, I like to work with like younger artists who don't really know what they sound like yet. And kind of like help them find that.
That's great.
I really enjoy that. I did a first record that I fully produced in my space here. It was by a band called Van Goons, and it's called the Ha-Ha's EP. It's on Spotify. I'm very, very proud of it.
That's cool.
I think that it's pretty great. And they were all like high schoolers when they made it, and it's going to blow your mind if you listen to it.
I'll listen to it.
So incredibly talented. So I just love it. I love, I'd love to go to my grave having worked on like 700 records if I can.
Well, it's cool because you're like to an age where you can not so much influence, but you can do what you probably were influenced when you were in Eso Charis, or you're it's kind of full circle in a weird way, where you're just like being able to put your stamp on something, and you've got a lot of of history and past that really lends you the talent, and the ability to do that, and the respect, obviously. I think that's so cool that you're in that good spot. That's amazing. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah. It's weird. Like I'm like, it's like I'm happy. Like people ask
that's
me,
great.
How's life? It's like, it's not this like fake answer. It's like, man, I really enjoy my life now.
I'm in the same spot.
It wasn't always that way.
No, I get it. It's weird. It's like, age and maturity and all that stuff. When it comes into it, it's like you have a fork in the road. You can go one way and try to do something good about it, or you can live in misery. And a lot of people, unfortunately, live in misery. But it's, that's cool that you've got. I'm really stoked for you. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So, obviously, you mentioned working with Norma Jean. Your brother, obviously, crushing it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about working on with Norma Jean on the All Hell record. Like kind of how, like, obviously, I'm assuming I know how that happened, but let's kind of talk about that record.
Yeah. So I should probably back up a little bit. I should have mentioned this, but so when Eso Charis broke up, Arthur and myself went to Living Sacrifice. Corey joined Norma Jean, and Jason started the Handshake Murders. So three
insane bands.
Yeah. Like, so that's just what happened. And so Corey joined Norma Jean after their first record, Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, came out, and it did really well. It's a great record. We were friends with them. They were big Eso Charis fans. I remember them finding us at Cornerstone and being like, please come watch us play.
That's awesome.
And we were like, okay, sick. And we went, and that happens a lot. You get demos from people, bands ask you to see them play, and unfortunately, a lot of times it's not good. Like,
yeah, I believe it.
Ask anyone from back then. There were a lot of jokes about demos. Where you would the demo was so good you gave it to Roadside Records.
That's incredible.
It's just terrible. But anyway, so but they were incredible. Like, we were blown away.
Yeah,
they were called Ludicrous at the time.
Yeah, I saw them at the time.
And they were real big fans. I didn't mention this. Eso Charis, after we broke up, we had 2 songs that we hadn't recorded, so we recorded them ourselves and put out a 7-inch. And it sounds gnarly, but I'm really proud of it. Like, the songs are, you can find it on YouTube and stuff. We've never released them like digitally anywhere. But it's called The Setting Roots for Winder 7-inch. It's kind of hard to find.
I'm looking that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's way different than it's way closer to the sound I think we were going to kind of end up with, and just the themes. But it's just like, we didn't know what we were doing making a record. So the recording is rough. But anyway, so Corey was in Norma Jean. They did the Oh God, the Aftermath record was the first one that he was on. And then the record after that was Redeemer. And they did it with Ross Robinson. It was like right around the time I was home. I was just working, learning how to, make music, how to produce music. And he just said, hey, you want to come fly out to, LA and like work on this record with us? So, and he was thinking more like percussion, Living Sacrifice type, that kind of approach. So that's what I did. I went out there, they rented me this big percussion rig, and I just played percussion on that record. And also one song, Daniel and I, we did like a double drum thing. Yeah. Just had a great time. Flew out a couple times to a few different studios where they were working on it. Corey and I just have a really easy musical
connection,
kinship. Obviously, we're brothers, and we learned how to play music together. So there's like this fundamental thing between us. We learned how to do what we're doing with the other person right next to us. Amazing. So it's just like a connection that's really easy. And so from there they put out a bunch more amazing records. But after the Polar Similar record, which I want to say it came out like
2015, 16,
17, 17 maybe, I don't know. The band just kind of I don't want to say it fell apart, but like several members left, and it was just kind of time to put the band together again. And so Corey met Grayson Stewart, who was playing in this. We met him through a band here in town called Harvester, and just knew him immediately that he was just an insanely talented guitar player. And his whole story about Norma Jean is really, really interesting. There's some interviews online where he basically willed it into existence that he was going to join Norma Jean one day. That's by incredible. Like learning everything about the band. He just happened to live in Van Buren where Corey lives. So he would see Corey around town. He got all the same gear, like learned just basically prepared himself to be in Norma Jean, which is crazy.
That's incredible.
So cool. He's such a great guy. And it happened. Corey, scooped him up very quickly. At the time, Jeff Hickey was still in the band, but
I know Jeff.
So Jeff just had a lot going on, and so it was basically Corey and Grayson, and so I just offered Corey like, hey, I can come in, just you're just 15 minutes away from me. I can come and play drums so we can write, or so you guys can write, and have a drummer in the room. And so that's what we did. I had met Grayson briefly before when he came to my house. Corey did a guest vocal for his band Harvester. That's how we met them.
Nice.
And I heard that song and heard his guitar playing, and me and Corey were like, whoa, this kid can shred. So so it was just me and Corey and Grayson. We started writing All Hail. And it ended up just being way more fun than we expected.
That's cool.
And, I was always just playing the part of like just being there to be a drummer so they could, but pretty soon it was like the parts were written and everyone was happy with them. I'm really, I've never really been a great like heavy metal drummer. Like I really am more of just like naturally more of like in that post rock, indie rock. That's just my style. So, the last thing I want to do is like force myself onto a record and or force someone to do a bunch of edits. Matt Marquez, who had been playing with Norma Jean off and on for many years, he played drums. We went to the studio and he actually played drums on the record itself.
Oh,
and
nice.
just killed it. But it's like, it was just super fun. Like we're all, I hear myself in that record, even though
cool.
I don't. And the same thing with the newest record that just came out last August called Death Rattle Sing for Me. Like same team from all except for Jeff Hickey. He came in sort of at the tail end of All Hail and helped finish it out. Yeah, contributed so much amazing guitar to that record. The Jerin, which is one of my favorite songs on the record, is Jeff wrote that song. So, so it just kind of became this thing where I just was in Norma Jean, and so they call me the ghost member because I don't. Yeah, because you don't tour. I don't play live. I don't tour. I'm not even in the pictures. I was in one video, but like I'm in the corner. I just write and help produce. That's awesome. Yeah. How do you? I know it's funny because you've mentioned a couple times you're like, I'm not really into metal, but you have an incredibly gifted talent at crushing these metal records. Like, I mean, oh man, it's funny. I appreciate it. I enjoy it. I mean, I don't listen to it just because it just doesn't move me. Like, but when I listen to the stuff that I'm on, it moves me. It's like it's. No, I get it. It's just different, I still like. I understand heavy music. Like, I understand how to do it, even though it's not, my favorite kind of music to make. Sure. But I do. I mean, I end up working with a ton of heavy bands because of it. Which I only do the ones I like. Hey, yeah, absolutely. You deserve that. So obviously work on these Norma Jean records, and around that same time as you and your brother decided to do Orphantwin, and kind of tell me about how that materialized. And I listened to a song. I did not know what to expect when I heard it, and I was like, "Whoa, this is heavy as hell." I mean, not that wouldn't be the case, but I just didn't know the departure. I didn't know. So the thing about about Future Classic from Orphantwin, which also came out, I think we're getting probably maybe close to a year. I can't really remember when it came out, but Corey and I just had some songs that they didn't really feel. One of them in particular kind of started off as a Norma Jean song, and we just kind of felt like it wasn't the right band for the song. Yeah. And that's really how all the songs are. But then we also, so the record is actually all over the place. Like, there's definitely a lot of heavy on it, but there's also, like the final song is like, it's more like a Beatles, it's got totally. No, I get what you're saying. So it's like, it's, there's like one song on there, more like a friendly radio rock kind of thing. So we just kind of wanted to make a no rules record where it's just him and I doing everything, like as a 2-piece. Totally. And so that's what we did. We just kind of had these songs set aside, and after we finished the final mix for Death Rattle, Norma Jean's Death Rattle, we just immediately jumped to Orphantwin. Solid State heard a demo and said they wanted to put it out. So we already had a label backing us. And so, we went up to Michael Palmquist, who is the other guitar player in Norma Jean.
Sure.
He has a great studio. He's a great, very, very talented engineer and producer. He's got a studio up in Springfield called Spire Audio.
Nice.
And so we went there for the kind of basic tracking, drums, did a lot of stuff here. And just kind of put that record together. Michael mixed it. And it's if I had to like say like the records I'm most proud of, like,
yeah, I was going to ask you
that one is really
really
high up there.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like it was stuff that you had written over a long period of time, or was it just kind of like, I know you mentioned one song didn't fit Norma Jean, but like, was it stuff that ideas over the years, or? Yeah,
there was one. I mean, Hominy, which is the final song. It's more of kind of ballad-ish. It's acoustic based. Corey wrote it. I think he had that kicking around for several years because I had definitely heard some of the parts throughout the years when he would just be playing. But for that song, it's the first song where all three of my brothers are on the song. So obviously I'm on drums and like some of the sampling, percussion, and backing vocals. Corey is on lead vocals, acoustic guitar, bass. My brother Adam played piano, and our oldest brother Tristan played the French horn.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, I got first few times I listened to it, it was like emotional.
I bet it was.
I was like, I'm just gonna let this be emotional, man. This is really cool.
You should.
I've always wanted to do it.
It's incredible. That's so cool. Like I honestly did not know that. That's really, really cool. And I think what a beautiful thing, honestly.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool Easter eggs like that on that record. Like the very first song, you can hear us like talking in the background, and it's a recording of the first time Corey was just telling me how the riff went. So he's like, so it's like this, and then you do this, and then the drums do this. So, and we're kind of playing it on our laps. And so I synced that up with the beat.
That's
so like
sick.
You're hearing the song while you're also hearing us the first time we ever talked about it.
That's so cool.
So like there's lots of like stuff like that. I like to have, and I know Corey, like just have stories, underneath songs, and people don't have to know that the story is there, but I think that it still adds this dimension that you can feel when you hear it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool, man. It's weird because I only heard, I listened to it recently because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I was like, this is really cool. I like this. And now that you've said that, I'm like, I'm going to listen to it in a different, a different realm. It really does. That's cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So no touring with that at all, just a studio project?
We're talking about maybe playing some shows whenever. I mean, right now it's just a streaming only.
Sure.
But we're working on the physical for the vinyl.
Nice.
And I don't know if we're going to do. I mean, we might just do vinyl. I don't know, but we're working on that. So whenever the vinyl is coming out, we were talking about maybe doing a show or two.
That'd be cool.
But we'll see. We got to figure out how to do all that noise with two people.
I get that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, so that brings me to Project 86.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Project 86. I saw them many moons ago, and I've, I always kind of enjoyed them from afar. Never been a massive fan, but I think they're phenomenal in their own right. Kind of tell me how that kind of materialized, came together. Talk about that, doing a new record.
Yeah, so I knew Andrew from way back in the day. Living Sacrifice and Project 86 did a lot of touring together. So I just knew him, but Corey knew him as well. Obviously, Norma Jean. You just get up crossing paths with the same bands over and over. So at some point, Andrew had a podcast. He had Corey on. They had a good talk. Andrew was a big fan of the All Hell record, Norma Jean All Hell record, and so he knew. Basically, Project it's like their last record, and he the way he tells it, he just has always wanted to make something heavier, and he had kind of tried to do it before, but he could never get it to where he wanted it to be. And so this was like, I'm going to make the heaviest thing that Project 86 has ever made, and nobody's going to stop me. So we hit Corey up just for like basically like thoughts or like
ideas.
What do you think about this? And Corey just volunteered to help, and then pretty soon he just immediately said, let's talk to Matt. And then for there was like Grayson was on, and then Matt Marquez. So it's five people from Norma Jean.
It's Norma Jean 86.
It really kind of is. Obviously Andrew, his vocals are a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we just started, really the last couple of years we started. It's a double album.
Wow.
But the first record was completed. I think it comes out this week.
Okay.
It was completed late last year, and since then we're working on these 2 EPs. One of them is like, the temp name is like the Brutality EP. It's just like stuff that's even heavier than the main record, and then the other one is called the Digital EP, which is like more experimental.
Sure. Like
different takes on. It's still like heavy, but like not going for like brutal. So we're real close to finishing all the whole thing. Like it's all going to be wrapped up by like the 20th of next month. So, or not all of it, but like all the main writing and stuff we'll be mixing a little longer. But so that's really how it came about. We just all started working on it, and it's really cool. Michael Palmquist actually did. So Grayson wrote the majority of the first record, Omni. Mm-hmm. Grayson and Corey, and then myself on the back end, but Michael Palmquist, wrote the majority of the stuff for these 2 EPs. So
nice,
super talented guitar player and writer. So yeah, it's just the dream team.
That's so cool.
No one's gonna stop me from having a great time when I'm working with like my favorite people to work with.
That's great.
So I do want to say, I know we kind of skipped over Unwed Sailor a little bit, but we didn't really skip over it, but I joined Unwed Sailor and then went to Lovedrug, but Unwed Sailor has continued putting out records.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole time. So and so we're on a kind of a streak right now where we're putting out a record every year.
Absolutely.
So it started with a Heavy Age. Which was I think 2019 or 18. Heavy Age.
Truth or Consequences. Phenomenal record.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that we also did that one. We did a lot of the recording here, and then John finished it up in Bloomington. Look Alive was recorded completely here. But yeah, and then from there we did the live at Convest, which is just us playing live. And then Mutha Charm just came out.
Dude, so
2
good.
Weeks ago. Yeah, I'm really, really, really proud of it. I think it's kind of a throwback to early Unwed, but while still bringing in a lot of the things that makes the band sound like it sounds now. But such a fun record to make, mixed by Chris Colbert, who's like one of my absolute heroes.
He's so sick.
Yeah, mixed and mastered.
Dude,
he just really made it magical.
He's so good.
And we're getting very close to being done with the next record.
That's what he mentioned. Yeah, when I talked a couple weeks ago, he's like, "I'm already on to the next one." I'm like, "Yeah, nuts!" Like,
yeah, it's really close. And we're already booking time with Chris to mix it, so I'm super excited. We're gonna fly up. I'm gonna go and actually be there this time for mixing, which I'm over the moon about. Just to watch him work and pick. I already hit him up and said,
"I bet.
Do you mind if I nerd out?" And he was fully open to it.
That's sick.
So Chris is up in the old National Freedom studio, which is Richard Swift's old studio.
Yeah, amazing.
Same exact space. So like, I mean,
that's right. He left it to him, right, or something like that.
It's like his family. I think still owns it, but Chris runs it now. So I mean, it's just so many amazing records were made there. Like, it's ridiculous. So like, I'm just excited to be there in the room, in that kind of historic studio, and then to watch Chris work. And it's like we're working on an Unwed Sailor record, which is like my lifelong love. In terms of let me
ask you this. I know Jonathan obviously writes the majority of the music, but when you're contributing to Unwed Sailor, what are you bringing? Like, I was telling him, for instance, Truth or Consequences to me sounds like a Cure record. Literally the Cure. He was listening to it nonstop. So it's like, is the influence on all of you at the same time, or is it just all,
Yeah. So the way it usually works, or at least how it's worked since like Heavy Age, is like he just records a lot of ideas like on his phone, and he is just always writing, and so but he's also, John is very like strategic. He's always grouping albums. So he knows like, okay, I want this for this album. And then, so basically he'll send me like these bass demos, and a lot of times I'll go and like, he's just playing freehand, but I'll go and I'll use Ableton to like put it on a grid. Yeah. And so then I'll just start like adding drums and like percussion, usually program stuff, but sometimes I'll mic up my set and play something. And then I'll like send that back to him, and I'll arrange it a little bit. Yeah. And add like sampled sounds or sometimes some keyboards or something. But yeah, that's kind of how some songs start. Other ones, he'll just come here with the idea, and we just start building it. And he always has another idea. So it's like we do the bass, we do we'll have some drums ready. He'll do the bass, and then it's like keyboard, and we'll have like 15 like tracks of keyboard, just adding, changing.
Well, it seems like you guys are all on the same page, which is we were like a complete like it's incredible. Like
John and I have like no issues working together. It's very fluid, and like we work quick.
It sounds like it's fluid.
Really quick. I mean, just the whole thing is just we just work well together. So other times we've gone in, like for Heavy Age, we went in and performed the whole thing live. There's 2 drummers on that record. Like it's that's all done live in the studio, whereas everything since then has been other than Mute the Charm. There's quite a bit of live playing on Mute the Charm, but it's just a lot of like putting songs together in the studio and just having fun with it. This
so cool.
Newest record is definitely like a lot of live drums. The next one that's coming out next year, but I'll spare you those details for now.
That's dope, dude. Dude, tell me what's the future for you, man. I know you've got this incredibly amazing situation going on, recording records, playing on records, got a great job, great family life. What's the future for you, bud? Yeah, so I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. I do have a few goals. Like I'm looking forward to like wrapping up all my current projects. And just spending some time working on my own thing. Like I have hundreds and hundreds of like sketches and just figures for 4 songs. So I think I want to do like a mixtape is what I'm thinking. That'd be cool. So right now I'm I just grab a few minutes when I can, and I kind of have a session going where I'm just pulling in different things I've made over the years and just trying to make this like cohesive experience with it. So it's like there's no rush on it. So I'm just going to take my precious time and just write the opus, bro.
I just want to make something that I could be really proud of. I think it's it's going to be like one long track, like a true like mixtape style. It's I just would really like to put something out under my
own
thing. So that's my next focus. And then tons more like we're working on new Norma Jean records, new Orpantwin records, Unwed Sailor, and a few other bits and pieces. So,
you guys are naughty. Yeah. You guys are so naughty. Bro, what an awesome conversation, man. I'm so stoked that you came on. I really appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's really great that you're doing this podcast. I've been checking out the episodes, and I'm learning a lot of cool things from people. So it's always fun to listen.
Sick, dude. I really, really, really gonna appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have to hang at some point soon.
Yep.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Hey, thank you to the listener for tuning into this latest episode. Thank you so much, Matt Putman, for hanging out, talking, shop. It was cool. Really stoked on it. Add me, guys, if you want. Facebook, Instagram, @TheRumorsAreTrueCast. If you want to like and subscribe, go ahead. I think it's kind of nerdy to ask for it, but hey, who's to say? All right, guys. Thanks for, again, tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Peace.